What happens if you break the monster tutorial in Project Playtime? Project Playtime is basically Poppy Playtime but multiplayer. When the game begins, we launch into 2 tutorials, and today we're going to be taking the monster tutorial and completely breaking it. We'll be finding things out of bounds and messing up basically everything. So, I hope you enjoy. Now, I always start these off with a quick recap so everyone is on the same page context-wise. We load up the monster tutorial and we play as Huggy Wuggy, where Ink Demon Bendy is basically instructing us to do terrible things. We are able to see specific overlays through walls, and we make our way to the first player. We then knock them out and throw them into the pit. We then are instructed to spawn a mini Huggy to keep watch as we make our way deeper into the facility. Now, the game dialogue hints that people are supposed to be running, but none of my players ever moved, so I don't know if this is glitched or what. Anyways, we throw another into the pit and we learn how to sabotage. We then learn how to use our special ability to intercept another player at a generator. Rinse and repeat as we attack a few more survivors, and the tutorial ends. Now, this tutorial's map has a lot less going on in it than the Survivor tutorial. However, it still has its secrets. So similar to the Survivor tutorial and Poppy Playtime Chapter 2, we can find floating text out of bounds. And under this map, there are several examples of this. These text phrases basically pace out the progression of the player. For example, one says, "This gate, LP Gate 2, opens after the player places a Wuggy sentry." Another says, "This gate, LP Gate 3, opens after a player uses the shutdown sabotage." So, these things are helpful when multiple developers are working on the same scene. Even though we never get to see the feeding pit on this map, it still exists, and it is empty when the map starts. So if we take the camera down there, we will of course find it, and we will see that nothing is inside of it. However, we can find something else out of bounds. So in that very first room where you encounter your first survivor, there's actually another survivor hidden just beyond the wall. So this survivor appears later on when you're introduced to players rescuing other players from the feeding pit. And so we can actually head out of bounds before this player is introduced, and we can defeat them while they're out here. And what's kind of funny is there are no boundaries out here, so we can take this survivor and permanently defeat them by dropping them into the great beyond. They will fall forever and ever and never respawn. So it's kind of like permadeath. Similar to this, if we take a survivor to the feeding pit manually, as in we travel with them in our hands and then we drop them down in here by ourselves, well, something interesting happens. They actually just vanish on the spot. For some reason, when we try to place them in this area, it actually makes them fall through the floor instantly. So they appear beneath the feeding pit as soon as we let go of them. And if we hurry and we take our camera way beneath the stage before they get out of view, we can find them in a constant drop animation, and they will plummet similar to the first survivor we dropped. So I'm going to rewind time a bit and start this whole thing over, because I wanted to see what would happen if we sacrificed the out of bounds player first to the feeding pit. So we can do it. We can place the player inside this pit. However, it does not advance the sequence of events in the stage. Things will only progress when the very first player inside bounds is dropped inside. However, we can see that despite the monster never being able to see inside this pit, that on this map, the mini Huggies inside the pit do activate when a player is placed inside. And this is interesting because these players aren't actually controlled by people, they're just NPCs. So of course, this got me thinking, well, what if a monster fell into the feeding pit? Would the mini Huggies kill the monster? And so, as you can see, going down here with Huggy Wuggy, nothing happens. And Huggy Wuggy, our monster character, also cannot hurt the mini Huggies in the walls. However, we can place one of our mini Huggy Wuggy sentries down here in the feeding pit, which is kind of funny, because they'll constantly scream because all the survivors are down here. And to cover my bases, just so you know, all the mini Huggy Wuggies in the pipes never attack anything on the tutorial maps. So what would happen if we pick up a survivor who's inside the pit, take them back up top, and place them back inside the pit? I was kind of curious because this bypasses the whole rescue another player thing, but apparently we can defeat a player inside the pit, pick them up, travel through the wall, and then drop them back into the pit. And because these players do not move for me, they'll actually stack up inside of each other. So similar to the Survivor tutorial map, we can also get on top of this map, and the view from up here is kind of cool. All the ceiling has double-sided collision, so we're able to walk on it. However, most of the walls from down below actually extend up too high, so we cannot jump over them with our monster's jump. So something that's kind of creepy is that by throwing another survivor into the pit, we can see that the mini Huggy Wuggies down here stare up through the ceiling at the last remaining player on the map. So all of them are looking straight up because in a room upstairs, there is one survivor who still needs to be thrown down here. And messing with this whole monster pit a bit further, I wanted to see what would happen if we added more than 6 players to the pit. So a normal round in this game has 6 survivors. But I kind of don't have a limit. I can spawn as many players as I want, and every single player can be defeated and thrown into the pit. So the pit can actually handle more than 6 players, which I find pretty interesting. However, for some reason, all the players down here are kind of busted now, and they're like running in place, and I don't know what's going on. So maybe that's an unintended side effect. But we also have the ability to add monsters, and not just players. So we throw in a Huggy Wuggy, and then we place in a Mommy Longlegs, and then finally, we add a newcomer, Boxy Boo. So there's kind of like this big party going on in the feeding pit. And I have no idea why this was happening, but Boxy Boo's fur was acting really weird, and their face looked like it was a block made of jiggly jello. So that's a thing. But because these monsters are all stripped of their behaviors and controller functions, they will just sit down here in their idle animation. And that brings us to the end of our monster party. But I hope you enjoyed this quick look behind the scenes, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!